What's up guys, it's Charlie with CompetitiveEdgeProducts.com. In this video I want to talk to you about canvas tents and mold. And I want to explain how you can prevent mold, and I want to show you my tent that I left out with the intention of growing mold so that I could test out ways to remove it. One of the best experiences of setting up a canvas tent and smelling that fresh canvas smell. It's the smell of camping. And a canvas tent can last decades, but you got to take care of it properly. They're often a bit pricey, but they're an investment that you get with the intention of using year after year, making incredible memories, hunting, staying warm and dry. They're like a shelter. But you're using it outside where it can be really wet and really humid, and sometimes you just have no choice, but you have to transport it wet and you get rained on. So what can you do to prevent mold? 1. Never store it wet. Being in the tent business, I've talked to so many customers who have gotten rained on, packed the tent up wet, which is okay, but forgot to unpack it or left it for like a week thinking it'd be okay. And even though not just being rained on, but storing it with heavy morning dew, you gotta dry it out still on any tent, not just canvas. So storing it wet is one thing, transporting it wet is usually not a problem as long as you unpack it once you get home, set it up in your yard, or at least drape it out in your garage with the fan on. 2. When you camp in humid and wet climates, you're gonna have that heavy morning dew that I talked about, and if you get rained on, it takes a lot longer to dry in humid climates. So having grown up camping in Utah, there's very little humidity. I've never seen mold on a tent, not even once, until I moved to North Carolina. So those of you in dry climates are very unlikely to deal with mold. Those of us in humid, wet climates, in the South especially, you have to make sure that you don't camp for extended periods of time in a spot that doesn't dry. You'll eventually get on the roof if you do. So how long is an extended period of time? Well, I demoed a Kodiak 12x12 in my backyard in Utah for 4 months, and I didn't see any mold at all. And you can find that video on YouTube if you want to see it, if you search for Kodiak stove tents. It was done in the winter though, so the winters even have, really dry air in Utah. But here, I wanted to see how long it would take demoing this in my North Carolina backyard before I saw mold. It was 4 to 5 weeks. That's what it took. Now this is 4 to 5 weeks of letting it stay in my backyard. It was exceptionally wet this last month, and there was a tropical storm. It just seemed like it was not going to dry. But we had fun camping in the backyard with the kids on some night in our backyard, and they love it. And once I saw the mold, as unsettling as it can be, I let it grow for another week. Now this is the part of the video where I point out how difficult this was and to try and get you to give me a thumbs up. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to point out that it took me 5 to 6 weeks to complete this task and that some of the testing discolored parts of my tent. Alright, the third thing you can do to prevent mold: leave the windows cracked. And this is probably the most commonly overlooked part, I think, from my experience. I left this tent out for over a month, and you know what didn't mold? The awning. It's the same weight of canvas, same color. What was the difference? I left the windows of the add-on room on one side open the entire time. I didn't do it to prevent mold. I did it to show how in a light rainstorm you won't get rain in through those no-seam mesh windows. But I kept one side open and the other side closed to show that for the entire demo, and it didn't get any mold. And if you look in the owner's manual, it will encourage you to keep ventilation going through the actual tent, not just through the add-on room. If you don't open the windows of your main tent area with all the temperature changes, like I experienced from the 80s down to the 60s, day in, day out, you'll get some condensation inside the tent. Fortunately, the cabin lodge style Kodiak tents have a storm window that allows you to keep it open, even in a moderate storm, while still keeping out the water and letting the tent breathe. Okay, so let me tell you how I got rid of the mold. But first, a little disclaimer. Don't try what I tried. I used a very strong chemical called RMR, Rapid Mold Remover, for demonstration purposes Also, whatever you do use, make sure you follow all the instructions from the cleaner bottle as well as the manufacturer's recommendations for the tent that you're trying to clean up and restore. First thing I did when I noticed the mold, I sat down behind a computer and I Googled how to remove mold from a tent. And the very first result was one of the artificial intelligent results. It told me the steps to use. And it basically said, use equal parts of vinegar and water, leave it on for an hour. Awesome. That's cheap. Seems like it'll work great. Well, I think it probably works great to stop mold from growing. And it didn't discolor the tent or undo the waterproofing as far as my experience went. But it didn't do anything to actually remove the black spots themselves. So I think it was a bit too good to be true, too simple of a solution, and it was. But I think it does prevent the actual spreading of mold. I think it stops it. So if you have vinegar and you don't have something to remove it, you can at least get by with that until you can, clean it up with something else. This is the product that Kodiak recommends to remove mold. And apparently it won't undo the waterproofing factor of the tent. Thanks to a buddy of mine, quick shout out to Tim in Georgia. He sent me some photos of his 12x12 with the same mold problem at the same time I was working on this. So he left his up for over a month as well, and this stuff did not work in removing the mold spots for him. Maybe again it stops them from growing, and maybe it would stop on people, and maybe it would get rid of it if it was very, very light, like when you can just barely see a haze of little dots growing. Maybe that would remove it, but it didn't remove any of the dark spots for him. So he ended up trying 30-second outdoor cleaner concentrate, which removed the spots on the outside but did nothing on the inside. I used RMR on the storm window first to make sure that it wouldn't destroy the tent fabric, and it didn't, because I tried it on this flower pot. Check this out. This is a flower pot in my backyard, and in literally like 10 seconds it removed the moss and the mold. So I was like, okay, this is strong stuff. This might actually work. So I figured I would give it a shot and see. I used a sprayer designed for bleach, since that appears to be an active ingredient in RMR. The sprayer was about $20 versus just a regular one that was like, $13, $14 at my local Home Depot. You use the RMR just as it is. You don't dilute it. I do wonder though if it could have. I wish I would have tried diluting it and trying it on the window to start with. But anyways, it's so strong. I feel like it could have, but it didn't. It went straight from the bottle to the sprayer to the tent. Within a few seconds, I could see that it was working. I sprayed both sides of the roof. And since it's an all-white tent, I also decided I was just going to spray the sides too. I had some dark spots streaking down the side. It did not discolor the screens or do anything negative to the zippers. Now, notice that I do have an awning attached to this, and that awning has a strip of olive around the bottom perimeter of it. The same olive color that you'd see on most Kodiak tents. I sprayed a little spot, knowing that I was going to discolor it, or assuming I was going to discolor it. And it was like 10 minutes before it really started to discolor. At first I was like, oh wow, this isn't going to discolor this, but you can see that it did, obviously. If you've got mold on your tent, really, you've just kind of got two choices. You can either look at the mold and live with it, and that's cool with some people, or you can have some discolored spots of olive if you have an olive tent, if you don't have the all-white tent. And it kind of makes it look cool anyways. It did remove the spots from the outside. Now as far as the inside goes, there were still some spots. It got most of it out, but I wanted to try to spray a little bit on the underside of the roof on the inside. Because this stuff is so strong, I put my camera on a tripod inside, held my breath, and sprayed a small part and left the camera running for a few minutes so I could see the change. And did it completely get rid of it? It did not. But it did make a big difference, as you can see, from this to this. I didn't bother doing the rest of the inside. It doesn't bother me enough to do that, but you can at least see what it would do with a quick little spray. That stuff is so strong. I don't plan on doing the inside. You have to have like more ventilation, I think. Later that afternoon it rained, so I thought for sure the waterproofing on my tent was destroyed, and it'd be wet inside the tent, but it wasn't wet at all. It also wasn't a torrential downpour lasting, hours and days. So maybe there is some weakness in that, but it survived just a regular normal storm, didn't get any water in. The best way to test whether it needs to be waterproofed again is to lend it to a friend and see how their experience goes. And go on from there. And plus, maybe you don't have to lend your tent out again to them. Seriously though, if you do need to waterproof it again though, like my friend in Georgia, he did, you'll want to get this Atsko to put into a sprayer so you can get it evenly spread on your tent. If you need to just spot treat it, you can use other products as well. And there's links in the description for each of those. And they're recommended officially by Kodiak, the manufacturer. So let me conclude by saying there's no silver bullet when it comes to getting rid of mold. It's better to prepare and prevent than repair and repent. So try and keep that tent dry. And if you've run into mold issues on any brand or style of tent, please let us know below. We want to hear what worked for you and what didn't. And be sure to let us know where you're located, what climate you're in. And I'm sure I've missed something in this video, so if you have any questions about this product, ask below and I'll be sure to answer. So I hope this was helpful for you. Thanks for watching.